evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this, the June 30th edition of Beyond the Headlines. My name is Colin, Dowe, and I'll be serving as your host and facilitating the conversation this evening. A very important conversation, a conversation that quite often is on the back burner. It's something that's there, it's present, but almost like an elephant in the room. But we're here tonight to share that mental health matters and to encourage the conversation and certainly the teachings and learnings that we will get this evening. We have the Minister with responsibility for mental health, Honorable Delma. Minister, welcome.
Thank you, and I am happy to be part of your program.
Well, and I believe this is the first time I'm sitting with you, so I'm even more thrilled to have you here on Beyond the Headlines. And alongside her is a repeat guest. We have Pastor Jude Hector, who is with us, and he works with a number of challenged youth. He's the director of Teen Challenge. Jude, welcome back to Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you, Colin, and it's really a pleasure for me to be here and to engage in the conversation, which I think is really important for all of us to engage with. So thank you for having me on the program, and good night, Grenada.
Well, and as I say every night, I do thank the guests for joining us, because you are the ones that make this possible. But before I jump into mental health and the conversations, I will just have to find out from Minister Thomas whether the celebration is over. I know it's been a partying weekend for you. You celebrated your birthday on Friday, I believe.
Yes, so I celebrated a milestone. So you would appreciate that a milestone don't complete over the weekend.
All right,
so
good.
It goes to the end of June.
So the end of June?
End of June.
So we have until midnight?
Yes.
It seems as though we need to wrap up the program or we start partying on the set. I'm not too sure which one we'll do.
But as you realize, it was a working body.
Yes.
So I attended several graduations and constituency functions. We also did have a mental health activity that I played cat and mouse with, because I had to address them at Grenville. Reach day 49 o'clock, they said they were going to be there, and then 10:49 they're still on their way. So I miss addressing this very successful event that maybe we can talk about later.
Okay, no problem. And well, I think that is sometimes is a Grenada issue in terms of timing, and as busy as this season has been for you, because you did what, 2 or 3 graduations on Friday? 2. You did 2 graduations along with the other functions.
Yes.
And you kept up well and still was able to get in some birthday celebrations. So even if it's a milestone, ladies and gentlemen, the minister obviously has a whole lot of energy to be able to carry on and still up. You know, as you share, because I think the ministry, well, having a minister appointed responsibility for mental health is new. And this in itself is a milestone. So share with us, what are some of the responsibilities of your ministry?
So first of all, I want to commend the Prime Minister and the entire cabinet for having this new ministry, prioritizing mental health, appreciating that it is an issue and we must address the elephant in the room, as you stated earlier. So the main objective is for us to deal with the whole issue of mental health and mental issues. And you know, over the years we have what we call stigma, we have discrimination. To talk about mental health, if there's a problem, then you have to keep it quiet and secret. You do not want the other person to know, because how they see you, the perception. If your mother is mentally ill, then it means that the entire family is mentally ill. And so that new ministry is assisting in changing the stigma, changing the discrimination, providing an avenue where people can speak freely, and we have many of our young people are coming forward speaking freely, but even interested in studying mentally, to be psychiatric, to be, you know, in that particular field, social worker and all that. So this new ministry is really aimed at providing that free space where our people can feel safe to address the issues that they confront on a daily basis.
Excellent. If you are to define mental health for our viewers and listeners, how would you encapsulate it?
I would say that mental health is the general well-being of a person. How you wake up in the morning, what is affecting your family. You know, if, for example, there's an issue, you suddenly lost your job, then you have mental issues. It doesn't mean that you're mentally ill, what you want is a job back. If you have if somebody is sick in your family or you are sick, then it affects you mentally. So you might be depressed, stressed out, and what you need is that family support and community support to help you go through those challenges, the challenging period.
Okay. Jude, anything you'll add as we define and this topic of mental health?
Well, yeah, I'm thinking of a correlation or relationship between, let's say, mental health and physical health. Now, if I'm talking to you about my physical health, you probably wouldn't know or think of me differently, right? I'm talking about my physical well-being. Emotional health, well, I mean, that might be a little bit more tricky, but I'm thinking if you kind of relate mental health at the level we do of physical health, that might help to neutralize the ground when we're having conversations, because we all have a mind, and that mind needs to be healthy, just as we all have a body, and that body needs to be healthy. So I'm thinking that if we kind of set a stage where when we talk mental health, we lay the field so that people understand that it has to do with all of us, because we all have a mind, and it has to do with how we treat our mind so that it remains healthy, it remains functional. It can help us to go through and address all of the issues in life that we need to, but in a way that really does not impact us negatively or impact the people around us negatively.
But what I'm hearing you say is that just as, well, the North American saying is an apple a day keeps the doctor away, right? We can eat, our fruits, right? So you can suck a mango, suck an orange, etc., banana, and, that will keep the doctor away. We ought to, likewise, on a daily basis, work on our own mental health. Is this where you are?
Yeah, certainly. And I would just at this point introduce, the other dimension of the human being, which I think sometimes is closely related to mental health, but we do not sometimes see the direct link, is also spiritual health. Because the mind, really, there is some spiritual elements of the mind, that there is the metaphysical, right? We can't see it, we can't touch it, we can't feel it, but we can see the impact of it either functioning or not functioning.
Minister, your challenge seems to be just what Jude highlighted here. If someone gets a cut on a hand or their knee is hurting, you can see it. So we can empathize because we can see it. When our mental well-being is disturbed, it's not as easy to visualize, certainly for the casual bystander. And hence, part of the challenge is getting our population to appreciate that mental well-being, one, is important, and two, recognizing when there are mental challenges. How are you going about doing this in terms of a campaign? Because that's part of the challenge of your ministry, for us as a population to recognize the importance of mental health and giving and getting assistance.
So in terms of the education is to be able to identify if you feel stress, a lot of times you feel stress, you feel depressed, your head is not in the right space, and so in that you can speak to someone who you feel comfortable with. And sometimes in our small island state, that's where the real issues and real challenges arise, because you are saying, well, this person know me, they know my friend, or they may know my teacher, or they may know someone close to me, and so once you're saying that you feel depressed, generally, in our small island state, people say, well, you're mad, or you're crazy. And so, because of that stigma, many people generally, so not young people, but people generally, because the whole mental health, everyone has a mind, and therefore mental issues and mental illnesses can affect anyone. And I normally say there's a thin line between sanity and insanity, because you could be already good now, but something tragically happens and it sets you apart. And so right away you have issues and you need the assistance. So it's bringing our people and people generally to a place where you feel that all is not well, and so I need to seek support and be comfortable that the support you are seeking are people who are confidential. And a lot of times people say to you that in Grenada they are not confidential, but I want to say that there are people who are confidential. There are people who you can speak to and who would keep it privately and be able to guide you so that you would not get yourself with this suicide and other people harming themselves otherwise, because they are afraid to speak to about the issues and the whole issue of stigma, because if somebody knows that you have a challenge, then it's spread all over the place and people look at you differently. Or if you are aware that a family member of yours have a challenge, then it also affects you. Mental illness really affects you, and I normally say in 3 ways. So it affects your whole family, right, because it's this whole issue of stigma. But the issue of medication, the impact when you start taking medication, it have on you, on your body, you know, the trembling and whatever, and you know, your ability to be able to cope with what is happening around you and how other people see. Sometimes even people who you expect to be trained, how they react to situations that affect people who have mental challenges.
From your research, conversations, data crossing your desk, what are some of the common causes in Grenada of the mental stress, mental illness that is prevalent?
So based on the statistics, it shows like drugs related in some instances, alcohol, that's a higher percentage, but there are other relationship issues and other social issues that can cause your family member or my family member to be mentally ill. So I am the Minister of Mental Health, but over the years I've spoken openly about mental health and mental challenges because my mother is mentally ill and I have a sister who is mentally ill. Right. So it's home, right home. And then as a person, people would say, well, use that to say, well, she mother crazy, she sister crazy, she crazy too, you know. So whenever it's thing, especially in public life, as a school child, I never undergo that because the truth is, when I actually I knew my mother was, but my mother left me when I was 3 years and traveled. Okay. And at that time she was normal. Right. So it was not a case that she was always mentally ill. So she left 3 children, traveled, and had some relationship issue abroad that triggered her off. Right. But apparently the mental illness runs in family. Right. So when I look on her father's side, there are other members who got mentally ill. And my sister had similar experience. Brilliant Form 4 students left and go overseas, hoping to finish secondary school, and then something else happened with the family, which when they didn't send her to school, and you know, and she too trip off. So you see the correlations, you know. So yeah.
All right. So Jude, we have 2 categories, and I don't know if two categories as identified, because there is the substance abuse. There is also some social triggers, and we also factor in hereditary, because not everyone going through the same situation will react in identical ways. But those are some of the instances. From your own work, when we see deviant behavior, quite often, I don't know whether your training would suggest that those 2 sometimes are reactions to stressors that causes mental challenges that plays out in different ways.
So I'm thinking from what people have told me, so the guys we work with, right? Because for example, some of them would say clearly when they feel under pressure, they go have a drink or they go have a smoke. Right. And of course that's a double-edged sword, because you're under pressure and you know taking into your body a substance which is altering the way the mind functions, because that's what drug does, right? It changes the ability of the mind and the brain to function normally, and so they've learned to cope, but coping in a behavior that damages them even further, and then that begins to take a physical toll on the body. In fact, some persons under the influence of a drug would do things that they don't even remember they've done, right? So it really means that you know you've not placed yourself under the control of something that really would take you anywhere it wants to go. So I think we've seen a relationship, for example, between persons who are regularly in the legal system. So guys, for example, who might be repeatedly in prison. In fact, the data we have now says that the recidivism rate is about 60%.
Okay.
Of that 60%.
And I want us to drive home that 60%.
Yes.
My interpretation of it is that 60% of the inmates, it's not their first time.
It's not the first time, correct.
Right?
Correct.
So the repeat offender, not just the offense, but early incarceration,
yes,
right, is about 60% of the prison's population are there for at least the second time.
At least the second time.
Right.
But what's even more telling, of that 60%, so 90% of that group have some degree of addiction that's driving the incarceration.
Okay.
So the challenge with that is, if I guess the challenge as a nation,
right,
is that if we can address the persons who are struggling with abuse, and in fact, when people talk about drug abuse and alcohol abuse, is not the person who's abusing the substance, it's the substance who's really abusing the person,
right,
because the substance remains after we all gone, is still there. So changing the conversation a bit. But the point though is that if we can address the addiction issues, we can really see a great improvement in our society generally. All right, not just that, but the amount of productivity we're losing on a daily basis, and the sectors that are struggling right now because persons who are really at the far end of using substances, they can't work properly, right? Or they may work for 1 day or 2 days and they get paid and then they disappear for another week. And I'm telling you, this happens. It's not an anomaly, it happens all the time. So I'm saying, Colin, that and something while I'm on this that maybe nationally we can talk about as well. In fact, I had a conversation with a Grenadian lady who's away, she's right now in Europe, and having some conversations about what do we need to do as a nation to address this. So for example, simple solution, well, I may say simple, but it would need a lot of work, a drug treatment code. So when a guy who's an addict commits a crime, and usually those are like petty crimes, right? Goes to court. Now he's been there in front of the magistrate maybe 15 times, 20 times. In fact, you have guys who are in their 30s, they've been to prison 20-something times. And that may not be the exception, eh? That may be the norm. So I'm saying that if we have a proper drug treatment code, so an addict commits a crime, he goes to prison. Obviously, prison is not the solution, because if it was, 2 or 3 times, then he'll be fixed. But he goes to now a treatment, and the magistrate says, listen, you have a problem. Prison is not the solution. How can we help you? So there is now a program that we're gonna sentence you to, and at the end we're gonna assess you at the end of that program and see the impact of it. If you need to stay longer, we keep you longer. But however, now we're putting them on a path of transformation. Right. You see, so I'm thinking when we talk about mental health and we see the relationship between drugs and alcohol, let's say misuse and abuse, and drug addiction, we have to now have a national conversation that says, what will we do about this, right? 19%, as far as I understand, not 19, 75% of and that's about 3 or 4 year stats now, of the persons transiting the facility at Monge are young men between the ages of 19 and 39. Okay. So we talk about young men in the prime of their lives, right, but they should be most productive, are caught in a vicious cycle. All right, if we go on the institutional level. So I'm saying, the research really needs to be done at a deeper level, but it's something that we have to pay attention to. As a nation, there's a relationship between the level of consumption of drugs and alcohol and the mental health state of Grenada nationally. Right.
Minister, let's just speak of the institutions. So what are the institutions that we have, programs that we have to address mental health issues?
So the institution, as we have Monge Mental Hospital. We do have a small amount of outpatient clinic that is not fully advertised, that is not fully equipped. So it's something that we are working on, because if we're talking about rehabilitation center, we are aware how long that will take. In fact, I was expecting by now we would turn this out and the construction phase would start based on all that has been done thus far in preparation. However, we are depending on the Ministry of Infrastructure, who are finalizing. In fact, they already finalized the designs.
Okay.
There are some other structural things that need to be done, and then the tendering process would be out. And so
that's for the rehabilitation center, and this rehabilitation center will be like an outpatient clinic.
No, this so the rehabilitation will be inpatient.
So it's inpatient.
So what we have now is that we have some outpatient clinic.
Right.
However, this needs a lot more work to be done, and so we are putting resources to ensure that while we talk about inpatient, which may take a year plus from now, after the construction phase start, it means that what are we doing right now? How are we sensitizing people that there is a program now that can enable them to come get treatment? It's harder when you're having to come, and you see coming has to be willingness to come. It's not a case that somebody grab you. There, in some instances, we have where workplace make it mandatory, so you are forced really, but you come for those treatment, you come into those counseling sessions and all that. But generally, you would not find someone who's on, let's say, cocaine, for example, on the street, deliberately deciding to come seeking, unless something happens and the police intervenes and bring them to Monge. So we have to be able to provide that avenue where family feel that it's their responsibility to assist, to compel, or not to compel, but to be able to motivate members that you need some assistance. You know, a lot of times when young men mostly are on drugs, family can abandon them because, you know, they're selling everything in the house and they're doing whatever, so you try to keep them away. What we want to encourage is that you look for ways and means to assist. But we, as a government, as a policy makers, must provide the avenue where you feel safe to come forward. And so we are aware that
so the thinking, just for the education of us all, for the outpatient clinic, individual lives at home and will have scheduled appointments to come to that location to meet with a professional for counseling treatment. That's the thinking. Okay.
But there's even more than that. So what we do have our social worker, our nurses who are trained out in the field. So as part of the new ministry, we have provided a brand new vehicle. We have provided training, continuous training for those outpatient nurses and social workers. We have also provided financial incentive, where they now get the traveling allowance and other allowances that will enable them to go in every parish. So you have team in St. Patrick, team in St. Andrew, in all the parishes. We have a team of people who are working now, and that showed some result last year. So in our statistics, we saw a decline in people coming into to Monge.
Okay.
And so we know that once we continue and provide that necessary support, more like that could happen.
I recognize that confidentiality is important, but just for the benefit of us all, the outpatient, so the nurse or social worker, and doctors, will they go to the health centers? I mean, where do they meet the people?
Yeah, so they go to different health. So for example, they go to Grambras, they go to St. Patrick.
Okay.
They go to the different districts.
Okay. Yeah. So they work through the health centers and the community health centers in order to provide this as an additional service.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So not just you're diabetic and you go to the health center.
No. So that is one, and they also go into the community, because it's also important to provide family with the education and the support, bring the medication home and all that.
Okay.
So, for example, I would want to use my mother as an example, who normally, sometimes twice per year, she would have to go to Monge. More than 2 years, she's outpatient. Okay. So that speaks volume. Not just one person who's close, but generally, we have a decline in people having to come to Monge.
What are the type of resources that we have at Monge now in terms of the number of physicians who are specialized in psychiatric care, as well as do we have psychiatric nurses? I know we have nurses at Monge, but psychiatric nursing is likewise is a specialization before a physician who specialized. What is the staffing like?
So I mean, there's a lot to be desired when it comes to the doctors and trained, you know. So we appointed a new doctor, and she specializes also in child psychiatry.
Okay.
So, you know, that's recently. We have Dr. Spencer, and who have been there for a long while.
Correct.
But you would appreciate that based on the percentage of people we have with mental issues.
Any idea as to what the population is like at Monge in terms of permanently, no, well, not permanently, but as an inpatient number of beds?
The truth is, they are permanent, yeah. So
right.
yeah, so sometimes we have 80 and over patients being at their residence, as you know, being there, and then sometimes it going down to 30 something, or you know, or 40 something, and all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we are looking. I mean, if we look at ratios, therefore, we have 2 physicians with the appointment.
So we have about 6 physicians, but in terms of specialized,
yes,
we don't have much specialized.
Right.
So in terms of nurses, we do have some few too, but we do have, and we are continuously training, sending. So our decision to send 2 last year, and so we're looking to send 2 or more this year.
Right.
Once, you know, to ensure that all our nurses are trained in that field. And it doesn't mean always having to go overseas, but even receiving training right here. So we have people who come from overseas, and we have continuous training on the job.
Right.
And we had seen several last year, and we have already started some for this year.
Okay, excellent.
But we are hoping that most of them will be certified in the field.
Okay, so we have the outpatient clinics, home visits. We have the Monge Hospital, which we are aware of. Any other facility or program that falls under the auspices of the ministry taking care of our mental health and mental well-being?
Well, so recently what we have is we have the school sensitization and education. So we have started last year and continuing this year, going into schools to provide the education with general education. So it's not a case where you identify individuals and say you are going there to deal with, but we also have a child clinic.
Right.
And you will be surprised at the amount of young children who are seeing our specialists as it relates to mental illness.
Right.
So we do have that. But we will appreciate, while we have that, there's so much more to be done.
No, absolutely. Jude, youth and mental health. I know that you've been focusing your work on teens. Share with us some of the experiences that you've had, but as importantly, who it is that you're seeing with these challenges. Male, female, children, adolescents, who's the ones in suffering the most, if I put it that way?
Yeah, I mean, before I answer your question directly, I just want to share an experience I had between 2011 and 2014 in Canada, Vancouver. So being involved with youth up there as well, in youth camps and so on. I was just really amazed at the number of young persons struggling with mental challenges, right? Stress, suicidal thoughts, and those kind of things. And at that time, I'm saying, well, Grenada is not like that. Or young people, we're not as stressed, right?
Right.
Came back home, and I'm recognizing but something has shifted, right? So I think we've seen more and more younger persons being challenged with mental illness.
Just before you go on, is it that something has shifted, or are we better able to recognize those challenges?
It's probably a bit of that as well. But I'm just saying, though, that there is more of a visible impact,
right.
And visible, let's call it a manifestation or evidence that more of our young people are struggling. And so I think we really need to ask the questions why. Right now, Minister made a point a while ago that triggered something in the sense that someone does not start off just being severely mentally challenged, right? There's a process. So I'm thinking if there are some pointers or some markers or some indicators that, for example, family knows or family can see, it means we can address it before it becomes an acute problem, right? So it might be a lifestyle change. It might be a simple lifestyle change. It might be a change of association. It might be a change of just routine. But without, I guess, proper direction and guidance, I think a lot of what we're seeing right now is really a result of, and we talk about it a lot, there's a lot of fragmentation socially at the home level, parenting and so on. So I think what we're seeing, especially among young people, is that there's lack of direction. There's lack of training, there's lack of discipline, there's lack of... So you know, those young persons are, some of them, or maybe a lot of them, almost have to figure out life on their own, and that leads them into a host of challenges, right? In fact, they open them to information that at their age they should not be able to access, right? Social media challenge. In fact, in the US, we've seen it already on social media. People are daring, and some of the things that young people are doing is because of the pressure that they get from social media. So in our own context, although we do not work only with youth, but most of the persons we work with, really, and I know it's a conversation you said, we don't want to stay there, but it's a lot of substance abuse, mental challenges. Okay. Right? And we know that that's not the only thing that causes mental challenges. I mean, people are stressed for different reasons, like no money, poor relationships, lack of options, because sometimes if a person's figure they have no, in fact, people have told me that, if they figure they have no option to succeed, they resign themselves to being a failure, right? In fact, I had an experience this evening before I came here. Like yourself, I had a long day, challenging day at the sea. Went to a location where we had some things in a kind of secure place, and somebody decided to go in there and do something that is not not good, right? I could have been very, very stressed. In fact, I could have called Colin and say, listen, man, I'm off the program tonight because I'm mentally not able to deal with this, right? But it means that if we have things that we can fall back on, coping mechanisms, right? What is that we can use to reduce that level of stress? It means that we can be better off. So I've gone around the way to answer the question, but most of the young persons I think that we are dealing with is just lack of discipline, lack of motivation. They don't see themselves as having viable options, and some of them, I'm thinking, don't want to go through the regular channels to accomplish success. So in other words, we spoke of that recently, Colin, as well. Success, there's a formula for success, right? It means it's a process, it's not a destination, it's a process. It's a daily discipline. But for some, they see something look glamorous, and it looks good, and they want to have it now, not next week. And in fact, they don't really understand the process of access. And so I think that kind of pressure leads them to decisions which places them under more pressure, and then so I think it's a vicious cycle, really. Right.
Let me tell you, I defend young people stoutly.
Yes.
So whenever someone blames young persons, I object. Right. Because I will argue that when you say lack of discipline, lack of motivation in terms of working diligently towards success, etc., I would translate that into lack of mentorship.
Yes.
And the mentorship doesn't come from themselves.
Absolutely.
It comes from the adults.
Yes.
So the delinquents here may very well be us as adults, not providing the stewardship to guide these youngsters appropriately. And you made the point earlier as well. You said that they seem as though they have to figure out life on their own. That's unfair.
It is.
So it seems to me that we probably need to have a program for adults to teach us how to raise our youngsters, and with that we probably can reduce some of the stressors and then some of the mental challenges that our younger citizens go through.
Absolutely.
So I want to agree with you on that, because our young people need our support and our mentorship. And so if you have some of the areas he raised that break down in family life, you can't blame the child because there's a breakdown, or the father is absent, or your mother is on social media than assisting you with your work. So the truth is, what our young people need are mentors, are people to support them, to say, oh, everything will be okay, to encourage them to be the best that they can. And so if there are breakdown in the homes, Pastor Hector, I want to put on the pastor cap, because that's where all of us come in. It means that we need the church, so you may say government, the church and the wider society. Because you see, we need to provide that necessary support to our young people and those mentorship to steer them on the right path. A lot of times we say that that's a bad boy and a bad girl, but when we seriously engage them and have that sit down, you realize all they need is guidance. Right. Provide them with the love. Sometimes the love is lacking. You have children making children. If at age 14 you have a child, then you want love for yourself. So right there, we start to see the breakdown already. I mean, hardly you'll have parents making a child 12, 13, and without family and other support, this child will be able to be the best version of themselves. So what we need is where all of us can come together and provide the necessary support. And I normally say, so I also wear the cap of religious affairs minister, and I do say that as Christians, as pastors, as church leaders, our role is not for Sunday and Saturday alone to go and to worship, but we have to be in the community, in the vineyard, going around and ministering and helping and providing the necessary support on the block, just like God has done. You know, so we have to be able to do that. To provide the necessary support, and I believe that if we have more of that, we'll see our young people with less stressors. The advent of Facebook has created, and social media, the whole aspect of the technology has created a void in some home. You give your child a tablet and then that's it, you know, and you be doing everything else, and the child is on the tablet. And so I heard Pastor said, or Mr. Hector said that after he came from Canada, he saw that and came back to Grenada, that something shifted. I'm not sure. You see, the whole issue of education and sensitization make people feel that now they can speak up. So more people are coming forward speaking about the issue. So it might be twofold. More people are speaking up, but in 2019 to 2020 we had the advent of COVID, and that had a different issue and as it relates to not young people alone, but the general population. And a lot of things came out from COVID. Families realized that they could not live with husband. They realized, well, no, it's tough to live with his wife because you are going out every day for work and coming back home in the night and maybe just go to sleep. But then when you had to be locked down, we had a lot of breakup in families. And so that speaks volume of some of the issues that are confronting us now. So we have seen an increase in children having issues because of that, the whole COVID thing. But I believe that the whole issue of sensitization and education, more people. I've seen young people. We had a series of youth talk last year, and we continue this year having from the Ministry of Youth and Sports and Mental Health a series of youth caravan and mental health, youth and mental health caravan. And people are coming forward, and young people are speaking up, you know, the whole issue of mental health and the mental challenges. So you see, we continue to provide that avenue where young people feel safe, then we will be able to address some of these issues that will confront them that might in turn cause mental illness. So we can deal with it at the onset.
On a proactive level. Okay, good. Viewers and listeners, it's time for us to take our first break. Mental health matters. That's the discussion this evening. So we'll take our break and we'll come back to continue addressing the issues. See you shortly.
Mobility, a common theme woven into the very fabric of human history. From ancient wanderers to modern explorers, our instinct to move, to seek something greater, and to grow has always driven us forward. Imagine a journey into pathways of boundless opportunities and endless possibilities. A collective future where the vibrant rhythms of the Caribbean, rich culture, and welcoming community create unforgettable experiences. Beyond citizenship by investment, we believe in our collective investment of time, resources, and energy that fosters innovation, creates jobs, and enriches lives, driving the growth of an entire nation. The Investment Migration Agency Grenada boasts over a decade of exceptional service and remains committed to guiding you toward global mobility and economic freedom through investment. your journey becomes our shared story of progress and prosperity. This is an invitation to be part of something greater, something enduring. Begin your journey at imagrenada.gd. I am a Grenada. Unlock the possibilities.
Looking to shop online from your favorite stores like Amazon and Shein? With GPC Global, it's never been easier. Get your very own US address and shop from around the world. With GPC Global, you can order the latest trends and must-have items, all delivered straight to Grenada to your closest post office for your pickup. We offer the cheapest rates, and our service is reliable and quick. No more waiting for weeks for your packages. Your satisfaction is guaranteed. Join the Grenada Postal family today and start shopping smarter. Visit us online at www.grenadapostal.com or call us on 437-POST. That's 437-7678. GPC Global, your gateway to the world.
Whether you're refreshing a bedroom or giving your home a bold new look, the Color Shop has the perfect paint and tools to make it happen, inside and out. With quality finishes for every surface and accessories to match, we make painting easy from start to finish. Whether it's a DIY weekend or a contractor starting a brand new project, the Color Shop is the trusted choice.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners. Mental health matters. That's the discussion this evening. Minister, early on you were sharing the structures that are in place to assist, from the outreach programs to rehabilitation center coming and the Monge Hospital. When you were volunteered for this program last week by Prime Minister Mitchell, the question that came up was that of Carlton Home. Yes, I'm putting it nicely.
I'll put it in a different way. I'll keep the way. Yes.
We were talking about the Carlton Home. Mm-hmm. We lost Carlton Home, it's almost 20 years ago. 20 years ago, and we are yet to have a replacement. Where are we with, because as Jude would have highlighted, and you two would have highlighted, there's a strong correlation between substance abuse and the mental health challenges that we're seeing. Mm-hmm. So where are we with a replacement for Carlton Home?
So we Mayerbo, close to the General Hospital, is the site identified. We have completed fencing the site, and as I said earlier, in all discussions, the design is completed. There is some whatever structural aspect that the Ministry of Work has to do, that is being done now, and so the tendering process will happen. I think the PS will maybe get tired with me, because week after week, after the budget, because we said we were going to start earlier, but the budget came later.
Cycle was late, right?
Yeah. So since the budget read, I've been to make sure that whatever is completed, because there was the design was completed, then we had consultation. There were some areas, gray areas that the expert identified that need to be relooked. So then they had to go back to the drawing board to finalize the design. So as we speak, the design is completed, and they are doing whatever structure. I can explain. Maybe maybe I would volunteer you to speak to the PS works and
right, and the chief technical officer,
CTO. But they are finalizing this to go out for tender, and they assured me that construction phase will start in October, and I said in June in my presentation at the budget. So and I'm still saying to him, okay, let's see if we can do it. He said he doesn't want to give me.
You're gonna hold him to it. I agree with him. So because if he give you earlier, you're gonna hold him to it. So he told me that because I was saying to him, well, we have this budgeted, should we
use up for something else, and he said no, because you would need all of that now, because you have to pay the contractor some upfront. So I would be on them,
right,
because to me that is a priority as it relates to prioritizing mental health. If we, based on our statistics, most of our young men who are on and off or even permanently at Monge is because of drug or alcohol abuse, and so they need this level of rehabilitation. And so as a government, we are committed to ensuring that that is done. But as I said, this is a longer term, because construction will start in October, and it means that that will run for maybe even more than a year, and therefore we have to have some programs in-house that will help cushion until that the time comes.
Have you insisted, I know you said the designs are done, we lost, I think it might have been Ivan, and then there was a fire subsequently, my memory serves me correctly, with the loss of Carlton Home. But are we building a climate resilient facility, recognizing that we may have the challenge of a hurricane again, and we certainly don't want to be placed in the same position where this necessary population we are unable to serve because, you know, as at the first wind, we've lost the facility?
So, I mean, if I tell you for sure yes, then I'll be dishonest, because I do not have the facts on to say it's climate resilient, but the fact that you raise it now, I will raise it with them. But I know generally in health we are looking at climate smart, even in our rehabilitation, or the rehabilitation work that is being done, even those that is proposed to start in Monge in this month, July, or next month. So we are looking at climate smart rehabilitation. So in my mind, that will be taken into consideration. I expect them to, but I will raise it, the fact that you raise it here tonight.
Well, if they're looking, they better start designing by the time you call them tomorrow morning. They have an answer. The other thing that I'll want to raise with you, because whenever we speak of addictions, which impacts, you say, not only the individual but their families,
communities as well,
and communities, we focus on substances. All right, addiction can also be gambling, and I would argue there's an increase in gambling nationwide.
True.
And in some cases we have addicts. What are we doing? What should be done to arrest this situation, so as to prevent us to have to spend lots more monies to assist that growing population, if I'm correct, of addicts to gambling? So
that's a good one, because at the level of the cabinet is an issue that comes up regularly, and so as the head of the cabinet, the Prime Minister is so very much concerned about that, and there is a committee that I'm part of that to deal with that whole issue. So later on, maybe in another time later on, when we really formalize and have a policy direction as it relates to that, we can come and give you those information. But what I could say to you, that we are aware that there is that issue, gambling, and we have seen increase among young people and older people and professionals involving in that, and so we must look at some strategy to arrest and deal with that particular situation. Prime Minister heads that committee, and so we will be able to provide updated information when we finalize. I'm certainly happy to hear that. Jude, I know you see a lot of the substance abuse, but this is another type of abuse, another type of addiction. What are your thoughts here?
I agree. I mean, an addiction is an addiction. The impact on the brain, as far as I understand it, is very similar when you look at, drug addiction or gambling addiction. The way it affects the brain is quite similar. And on that note, again, I think it's how we sell culture, how we sell society, how we, in other words, what's gambling? It's taking a risk on something because you want to get something quick. All right. Whereas if we are really taught the values of working and dedication and process, I think we can really begin to reshape and reframe the way that as a society we go after things, right? So identity. right? When I know who I am, and I know my purpose, I know my worth, I understand the principles of life. So I know in the past we taught things like civics, and we taught things like, critical thinking. I mean, so in other words, we have to kind of really understand what the trends are, and then how we can, one, prevent persons from going there, and then those who are already there, help them out of it. And I would dare say that prevention is a lot less costly than intervention and rehabilitation. So in other words, right now we have to begin to, from the primary level, secondary level, begin to really sensitize our young people and show them a path to live and a way to live that does not allow them to go down that road. So I agree with the minister. I think it's a problem.
How do we go about addressing mental health issues, though? And do you feel, from where you sit, whether mental health is seen as a priority in Grenada and in the Caribbean region?
Right, well, I may be kind of out of my league in that particular response, but just from conversations I'm having, so for example, let me give you one case in point. Mental health treatment court. Now, I know right now Jamaica is in the process of if they're not there yet, they go in there. They did the drug treatment courts, I think, since 2004, somewhere around there. So they're ahead of us. So I'm thinking if we as a nation really say we're prioritizing this, then we need to start beginning to put the structures and the systems in place to demonstrate that, right? I know it's probably going to cost some. We have to have some more professionals, but there's a cost of not doing it, right? So I'm saying, so what will it take for Grenada, for example, to have a mental health treatment court? So that we can then, when somebody comes to the court or is in some area where they need treatment, we then understand what kind of treatment, how long is it needed, and so there's a whole, I think, systemic approach, because sometimes they don't need just one person; they need a group of persons, to really take them through the regimen of treatment. So community, family, and all of that. So to answer the question, I think we may not be seeing, and I know there's some movements now, but the full extent of it. And let me just make one point in the matter of Carlton Home, for example. Now, in 2004, when Carlton Home was destroyed, we had successive governments at the time who came to power, but nobody addressed it. So I'm saying that now that it's been addressed, it's telling me now that okay, at least there's a priority. That we at least see some evidence. All right, but I'm saying that we should take this way down the road, because the thing is, right now we're catching up. All right, so parents, guardians, teachers, students themselves, we need to begin to be sensitive to the importance of mental health, how we identify some early indicators that something is going wrong, and then how can we address it collectively and not allow, for example, persons who are struggling to figure it out on their own.
All right. And I think this probably is a good time, and I'll allow Minister to make the appeal. Apart from what government is doing and they're acting, apart from what Grenada Cooperative Bank has done, other corporate entities ought to recognize the importance of mental well-being on their staff and their customers, and hence be willing to support this effort. Minister?
So I want to place on record on Beyond the Headlines, I think maybe I've done it some other time, our thank you to Grenada Cooperative or Homegrown Bank for taking that first step to launching this walkathon, really. Pump it up, where they raise over $500,000 that is sitting at the bank waiting on us as government to build the structure, and that can assist us. So we already have the monies for furnishing, because we have in excess of $500,000, and so it's a call for all Grenadians, not only the private sector. The private sector can help maybe in terms of raising funds and raising awareness, but as I said earlier, everyone, the church, the general population must be able to address or assist in addressing the whole issue as it relates to mental health. Because we have to appreciate that mental health is not really mental illness. Whenever people hear the word mental health, they say, as I said earlier, it's a different connotation.
Right.
But even at the workplace, so if we see something, we talk about gambling as part of addiction. We have alcohol abuse, and so we have many workplaces. So we must commend those who are doing, because while publicly you are not aware, we have many workplaces who, when they have issues with good workers or people who are working with them, they do seek the treatment from us. So they do bring them to this outpatient clinic and provide the support as their workplace. So we are even calling on family members and community members, because a lot of times we have at present a number of mentally challenged people who are placed in Monge, and no one really comes to look after them.
Right.
Because and the truth is, it is really difficult to deal with people who are mentally challenged. So make no mistake, I have an appreciation that it's tough. Sometimes you have sleepless nights, sometimes you are scared, because you believe that they can harm you, and that is possible.
Right.
Because remember, your mind is in a different place. Sometimes you feel that and you're not aware what you're doing. So sometimes you hear people say, well, he knows exactly what he's doing. If he knows what he's doing, then he would not be doing that. Right. So we have to be able to be sensitive to the fact that this person needs our care and our assistance, but even be sensitive as a community to family members, because the way you treat family members make them feel, well, okay, if I put them in Monge, then maybe people hardly would even know that I have a sister, mother, cousin, or uncle who is mentally ill, and I can live my life normally. So we want support from the community, support from family members, support from the general population. But I believe that we can achieve that when we provide the education, and I believe that we are stepping in the right direction in terms of providing just the ministry and providing the support, a whole budget line that gives us the impetus to do to do things as it relates to providing support for people with mental challenges. And so we have started it over a year already. We still have a long way to go. I mean, the whole issue of the Monge, the whole structural issue. I mean, when you visit Monge, I took the entire cabinet, because people need to appreciate. You could be outside and hear and say, and you might hear a caller on the radio and call and say, well, people lying on the ground or whatever. But when you see and you feel what others are seeing and feeling, then you'll prioritize it more. Right. So I took the entire cabinet there, and that day, everyone, you could see it impacted them. And so at the end of the day, every member agreed to pay, I think it was $600 and something towards purchasing a brand new mattress. So we collected the monies and gave them to order brand new mattresses. But also we had the commitment from the cabinet that we'll provide whatever support that is needed to ensure that we move. So we look at the whole infrastructure, and I mean, a lot to be desired. Right. And so some work will start there this year. We have already done the fencing. We have procured over 20 fit-for-purpose beds. I mean, we have in our budget a number of other things that have to be done this year. We have done a lot last year in terms of purchasing important equipment that is needed for there. So we have done that last year, and we'll continue to do this year. But as I said, we also need more experts in the field. So it means that we have to be able to seek to get more doctors, but train more doctors. So you talk about scholarship earlier on, and so we have to be able to decide exactly what we want when we provide a scholarship. Right. So we must appreciate what our needs are as a nation and provide the scholarships in those fields. So, I mean, we have a lot of businesses. I'm not sure if we still need to provide all the scholarships there, but we can look at specialized areas as it relates to medicine and biotechnicians and all that. Those are needed as it relates to even mental health. So scholarships, providing more scholarships, getting more people. There are a lot of Grenadians who are abroad who are providing the expertise. Since we started this new ministry, a lot of people came on board, providing training for our nurses, training for first responders, police officers, teachers. So we have a number of training taking place. some took place last year, some happened this year.
And I wanted to just to expose our viewers and listeners to the type of training and support that your staff has been getting, because sometimes we don't recognize when we say Monge, we think mental health, but the occupants of Monge also have health challenges outside. They have physical challenges as well as mental health.
Yes.
So it's a full facility that is provided there. But you mentioned assistance for first responders, because a few years ago we had a number of shooting incidents where police responded to situations where people were mentally challenged and firearms were discharged. We had individuals killed in some instances. So you said for police officers, for teachers, and
nurses.
Okay.
So most of our first responders. So we had training in St. George's, we had in St. Andrew, we had across the country, including Carrico. And then so we're talking mental illness and we're talking mental distress. In the advent of a hurricane, you know that there will be increase in mental distress because you have no roof over your head. That's one of the I mean, no roof. There's no, sometimes you can't go to your work as normal. So those are areas of that needed our intervention, and we continuously having, even now, sessions in Carrico. Our staff been up there on more than one occasion. Recently, Dr. Chaitan and a team of people went to Carrico to provide assistance, and from the ministry standpoint, we agreed to provide some level of support continuously. We have a team came from the US and also provided the support. So we continuously having people from the diaspora, our trained Grenadians, experts in their fields who are coming home, who are providing support, and so we are looking at other ways and means in which we can engage some of these experts. So a lot of times you don't really have to be in Grenada to provide with the advent of technology.
But what we want is a knowledge transfer.
Knowledge transfer.
So they will come, they'll train, and almost have like a train the trainer, so that we'd have people in Grenada who can pick up the mantle when they return.
So not almost. What we had was a training of a trainer program. Okay. So you train them, and they in turn is expected to train other persons. Okay. So we had some last year, we had one earlier this year, and we continuously having training. We had Mount Sinai coming in and do some training also, and all that. We did a total evaluation of what is needed, so which would enable us to be able to move forward, appreciating what needs to be done and how can we look at those things that we can do now, because you'll appreciate if you have all those necessary issues, all the issues identified, it's not going to happen overnight in terms of dealing with it. We're not going to be able to get up the next morning and say we're going to have 10 doctors, if that is what is needed, and have all our nurses trained to be specialized in the particular area. But we are taking small steps, and will continue to put resources to provide all the necessary support so we could deal with the issue of mental health as any other health challenges.
Okay, excellent. Viewers and listeners, it's time for our next break, so we'll take the break, and then when we come back, we have with us the Minister for Mental Health, Honorable Delma Thomas, and Pastor Jude Hector. We'll be right back.
Have you heard about the new Softweave bathroom tissue with total hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Softweave Total Hygiene Bathroom Tissue, available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Softweave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information. Are you longing to taste authentic, flavorful dishes from Thailand? Then look no further. Konthai, the newest restaurant located at the back of Galleria Mall top floor, is the place to satisfy your taste buds for Thai dishes that are well seasoned with fresh local spices. They offer a great selection of sumptuous dishes that will tantalize your taste buds. Visit Konthai today because the food is good, the ambiance is great, and the staff friendly. Available on Carabites and Yogo Grenada. For more information, call 456-0074 or visit konthaigrenada.com or stop by the new Galleria Mall, Grand Anse St. George. I'll meet you there. Attention all divers, snorkelers and underwater enthusiasts. Effective May 15th, 2025, all visitors to the renowned Mullinaire Underwater Sculpture Park will be required to pay a small fee of US $3.50 or EC $10 per person. These fees are essential to support the ongoing maintenance and repairs of the sculptures as well as the development of new features to ensure the park remains a world-class attraction. Payment can be made through the Grenada Tourism Authority's online payment portal, available on the Pure Grenada website, www.puregrenada.com. We thank you for your support in enhancing this extraordinary underwater product. This announcement is brought to you by the Grenada Tourism Authority and the Ministry of Tourism, dedicated to protecting and conserving Grenada's resources for the enjoyment of all.
Need to check your bill balance? Use the Grenlec mobile app. Open the Grenlec mobile app and tap the icon labeled Balances at the bottom of the screen. View your bill details, including your current bill balance, the due date by which you must settle your bill, the amount and date of the last payment you made. It's quick, easy, and available 24/7. Convenience at your fingertips.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners. We're speaking mental health matters. You certainly can weigh in at 440-1252. That's our number, and we welcome your contributions to this topic. So feel free, call in and share. 440-1252. Jude, how do we begin to get our citizens to recognize when they are challenged? When my hand is hurting, I know my hand is hurting. When my head is hurting, I know my head is hurting. But how do I recognize that I may be having some mental challenges and hence need to seek help? Oh, we have a caller online. So good evening, caller. Welcome.
Yes, good afternoon. Good evening, Mr. Dowe. We're hearing me?
We're hearing you clearly. Go ahead.
Yes. Miss Colin, we both went to the same secondary school, but the difference was that I went many years before you in the 60s. Probably you were not even around years yet. And one of the things that we used to do in those days, we used to learn Latin. We could get into?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, we used to learn Latin. And a Latin phrase that remained with me is festina lente, which means hasten slowly. So I'm saying all of that to send a word of caution to minister and to administration that she's part of, that with regards to decriminalization and legalization of marijuana, that we should hasten slowly. And hasten slowly means you have something that you want to do, but please take your time. That's what it means, hasten slowly. Because the minister in her delivery spoke a lot about mental illness and drugs that young people in particular marijuana use. So, once more, Festina Lente, hasten slowly.
Thank you very much. If the caller said he went to secondary school in the 1960s, I think he's right. I was not around in any form. Minister, hasten slowly. Thoughts?
So hasten slowly. It depends on exactly what you're doing. So if you're going to open up the market and anybody, including the children, young people, could just come and take drugs, I do not think that's the direction we are heading. I think we hasten slowly, and I do not want to slight what the caller said in terms of the impact some drugs can have, including marijuana. If because it all comes down to family history and all that. So if you have a family history and maybe you might be 25 years and go and just take one split from, because there's a family history, you could trigger off. So as a government, I think we appreciate those issues, and in terms of we also appreciate that, and generally as medical professionals will say to you that there are medicinal properties in using marijuana.
So it is really the ensuring that the field is appropriately regulated, and that's what I got from what the caller says, is make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's, rather than jumping in. We have another caller online. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I want to make a comment first, and I want to ask the minister a question. The comment is with regard to that committee that Minister says she's part of, with regard to the gambling addiction. I think the first place that this committee should look is at National Lottery Authority. That's an institutionalized gambling institution. So look at this institution, because you can, on the one hand, trying to tell people to stop gambling, but you're promoting gambling daily. The question I have for the minister is, the first caller kind of bit me to the punch, because I wanted to find out from the minister if she's not concerned that the decriminalization, because I understand in July, early July, that bill would be going to Parliament. Are you concerned, Minister, that this would send the wrong signal to our young people, in that they may take it to mean that it's okay to take that drug? I heard you guys saying that substance abuse is one of the causes for mental illness. So aren't you concerned that the young people may take this decriminalization as a signal to take marijuana? Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. Minister?
I do not believe that. It's how you sell it. So how you table the bill and what you sell, how you go about sensitizing and educating the population. So it's not a free-for-all where you say, well, everybody could just go, young people could just smoke. There's religious, like the Rastafarian, for example, they use it for religious purposes. So in that regard, that would be part of what, I am not the legal expert on the field, but I believe we have doctors, we have the expert on as part of the committee in terms of that particular bill, and I believe that as a government we are sensitive to the issues and the effect that marijuana use can have on younger minds.
Marijuana abuse.
Marijuana abuse. Because we also, as I said earlier, we also appreciate that marijuana do have a lot of medicinal properties. So is what will be tabled and how we go about providing the necessary education for our population is what will cause people to be misused or feel that they can use it as young people. Yeah.
So it seems as though from both callers that there needs to be an appropriate and aggressive educational campaign to let people know that the movement here towards medicinal marijuana, it's not a free-for-all, everybody smoking, everybody have a bale of weed on the living room center table. It is to be used in a responsible manner. And the thrust of this, certainly I can speak to the St. Vincent as they have developed their industry. One has to be registered to grow. There's a certain amount that is legal that you can carry. You have to register. It has to be tested in terms of the grade and hence what are the properties and therefore the use and dosages. So it's really getting into the science of it and not a free-for-all of smoking. And that's that. And when the first caller said hasten slowly, that is what crossing the T's, dotting the I's, that was the interpretation I got. We have another caller online. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
So he also raised
good evening.
as it relates to the committee.
Well, yeah, so we'll get back to that. Let's take this caller and then we'll get back to that one. So yes, caller, go ahead.
Yes, good evening to everybody. Let me just say good evening to my two classmates who I'm very proud of in the studio, Colin, Dowe, and Jude, Hector. Very proud of them. Went to school with them. And let me just also compliment the happy belated birthday to Delma. And let me just compliment Delma on sort of raising the profile of mental health issues in Grenada. I know she's blazing the trail, and I know she has emotional and motivated reasons to do so, because it hasn't really been given any sort of serious attention over the years. So I want to compliment her on that. And I want to just throw in my little two cents just quickly to say that, yes, indeed, I agree there's a need for a lot of education on this, because I want to bring Jude and Colin's memory to school. Remember, and this is not being insensitive, and this is not calling anybody name. Remember when we were in class, there was a guy in the school, in our class, and he had acute mental health. But I'm sure none of us would have known it again. And I'm sure the society would not have understood it. And I'm sure there was no programs to properly respond to this. So I just throw this out to say, I think there has to be education of the community. And in addition, and Colin was touching on something, I know Delma has led a lot of the training. There's new training that's taking place now. I think one of the areas that needs to be properly trained is the police as first responders. Because you touch on something, Colin, which I have been on the front lines writing. So you talk about the police coming and shooting people and that sort of thing. That has happened over the years. I'm not blaming anybody in studio or anybody for that, but that has happened in Grenada over the years. I've actually written stories on over the years coming up in the 90s, where and I'm talking about over 15 or almost 20 people over about a decade and a half or so, where someone with a mental issue in a community starts to behave in a certain way. Maybe they haven't taken medication, all the factors that influence their behavior. And someone in the village calls the police, and the police comes in shooting, and the person is dead. So specific training to the police to respond, what was the protocol? So I'm talking about recommendation of policies and procedures for first responders and people involved. That has to be part of the integrated approach that we're trying to make to take care. Also, the issue of medication has to be addressed as well. Access to medication. I mean, there are people who are not inside Mwangi who are living, and sometimes their names come to me, and this is for person looking for medication, and I say to myself, but this person, I didn't know this person had a mental health issue. So we all have different degree of mental health issues and challenges, and I think yes, proper programs need, because the program that will deal with the person in the Mwangi is not necessarily the same public program to address for the people in the community or who go in and out. And finally, I just want to suggest as part of the whole revamping, maybe consideration, and this is where a level of confidentiality must come in terms of policy and procedures, a database. So So it's not just about who is in there, but who is outside and who you're working with it. So if you know you have a database and there's a level of confidentiality, which is crucial, you will know you have a team that will reach out to the different persons, to offer the treatment and offer the medication and so on. And then the issue with marijuana, some people I don't think we understand exactly what we're dealing with, because marijuana may not necessarily be the problem, but marijuana might be the trigger of the psychosis that exacerbates the problem. And then also, finally, the issue of mental health as a disability. Is it a disability? I know Delma herself, in a previous administration, led a revamping of the welfare program to cover a lot of people who needed welfare support. Is there consideration for, if it isn't, including mental health as a disability, if somebody is clinically diagnosed as a disability, to get welfare support? Sorry for being so long. Have a good night. You guys doing a great show.
Thank you very much. And of course, because Jude and I sat in the same benches with you for 5 years, the voice is easy to recognize, but probably the whole of Grenada can recognize that voice.
Because you are in the media, the voice is also...
That's what I'm saying. The voice is very easy to recognize. But a number of points being made, if you just comment.
So I want to start where he stopped when he said in terms of the social programs that it relates to people who have mental illness, and I do know that is still part. In fact, when this government decided to increase for people who's 65 and over, mental and disability was also part of the group of people who were included in this $500 per month. And I do know that the social workers normally will work along with the ministry and I mean maybe with the social workers in the Ministry of Social Development to get support for their clients, not only support as it relates to the seat, but even as it relates to housing and other government assistance. So it is continuous, and as I said, we have an increase for people who are mental challenges, and we have to continue to work together. So Ministry of Mental Health and Ministry of Social Development to deal with those issues that confront people who are mentally challenged and provide them with that support system.
Okay. We have another caller online. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Hi, good evening to all of you on this evening's program. Yeah, Chester Humphrey here. I just want to add my bit to what is going to be a major catastrophe that is facing us, because we are being sold a fallacy, and that fallacy is the overwhelming undocumented benefits of the legalization of marijuana. The sad truth about all of this is that the people who would be affected most are the children of working class people. One of the things I celebrated as a member of the New National Party was the fact that the leadership was opposed to the liberalization and its use of marijuana. However, as it pursued votes, a bill was introduced. Now, at the end of the day, the pursuit of votes by jumping on the marijuana bandwagon did not procure for our party the continuation in office. Just about a week or two ago, one of the countries in Southeast Asia, if I'm not mistaken, I think, I'm trying to recall the country now, have just re-abolished the legalization of marijuana. Its psychotic effects, in fact, there is a lot of medical evidence. And where I live, I see students, young students, especially boys, but now including girls, gathering along the steps during the day time, and they're smoking marijuana. Teachers in our institutions will tell you that a lot of the students are engaged in this. We are going to have an explosion of mental illness that I don't know how this society is going to be able to deal with it.
Paula?
All right? We are going down a very slippery slope. We are being told of the virtues of money that will be pouring into the coffers of the state. Nothing is more elusive than that fact.
Okay, all right, Colin, if I can, because I think we got it. So it's two things on here. One, the current state, as I listen to the caller, of consumption, and from what the caller said, it's being abused. It's being abused by young people and students. And the question is, how do we arrest that situation? Because it exists now without the bill. So how do we arrest that situation? One. And I want to give you the opportunity also to respond to the earlier caller dealing with another addiction, that of gambling. So if you can, address both. One, how do we arrest the situation of abuse, substance abuse in our society, marijuana included, and how do we arrest the abuse of the availability of gambling nationwide?
So let me start back with the gambling aspect. So he raised that. So I guess he's thinking that we are looking at doing policy in isolation to the fact that we do know that the National Lottery Authority is under our jurisdiction, and it's also gambling. So in terms of our strategy, it means that we must incorporate and be able to see how we can deal with all the different things that I mean, the card gambling and the people who will go to blast and go to wherever. So it will be a holistic approach. As I said, I can't speak to it because we have not. We only have one meeting thus far, and so I would not come here to speak of an issue before we have discussed. So
what I'm hearing is that gambling is on the radar of cabinet.
Yes,
it is at the radar, so much so that the Prime Minister himself is chairing a cabinet committee to look at the ill effects of gambling in Grenada.
Yes, and what can we do to deal with that particular issue. So I cannot, as I said, I cannot give details that I do not have, and so the Prime Minister is the head of that committee, but I'm saying that we are already looking at it. We are already realizing that there is an issue there, and we are looking at ways and means to deal with it. The whole issue of the marijuana issue, it sounds like. So education is important because I mean, a lot of people's song make it look like you come in with a bill that will open up marijuana for the use by all and sundry, and so on. We're talking about legalization. I'm not sure what the bill is seeking to do is legalizing, where everybody could just freely walk into a place and young people could just buy marijuana like that. Based on what I know, I mean, that will be tabled. The Attorney General is the one that can speak on the particular issue, but it will be tabled soon. And so I think there were a number of consultations, and I think I heard the caller said that he was a part of an administration that maybe did not do that, but I know that it was on the table. It was a bill that was already tabled, in Parliament. And it's not a bill the intention is similar to what is happening now. So you are not saying that you are opening up the market and everybody could smoke, but you are saying that we have seen in the justice system a lot of our young people are having a rap sheet, if you want to call it that way, where find them with one spliff, as you would say, and then they are charged by the police. So you have the police running around behind people for one spliff. So I think the issue is there will be a limit in terms of and the issue of children and the issue of education. So all that will be done. So in other case that you open up the market and everybody could smoke and then we expect to see more people being mentally ill on the street, because so that's not our intention.
Jude, I would stick with marijuana for a little bit. Is marijuana a cause or symptom from your experience? Is it that, because we're looking here now at abuse and the fallout from it, is it that individuals have challenges and they look to find solace, and they find solace in substances that they abuse, whether it's cocaine, whether it's marijuana, whether it's alcohol? They find solace in inappropriate relationships. 13-year-old girl with some abusive relationship, well, or boy in some abusive relationship. So hence my question, are these things causes or symptoms of deeper rooted challenges that individuals may have?
I'd say it's probably a bit of both, but I think the causal, I guess, implication. So, and by cause, what I understand you say cause means, okay, what's causing them to use it? All right. So I think when I speak to the guys that we work with, most of them got introduced to drugs and alcohol 12, 13. And a lot of them by relatives, uncles, brothers, and so on. So what caused them in the first place is seeing somebody that they either associated with or admire give it to them. So for them, it's not a problem. It's okay, right? In fact, we have problems convincing some young people that this is actually harming them. I've had doctors, a particular medical doctor, come and do sessions with us at the institution. And the doctor is telling the brothers, hey, this is harmful, this is what it is doing. And the brothers are denying the doctor, and it's not a drug, right? So in other words, I think because it has been normalized, it has been normalized. And I think we have to be careful that we don't even normalize it further. And we have to educate. And we have big countries who are struggling. My wife and I one time, we were in Vancouver one night, observing downtown east side Vancouver. Guys, and of course it's legal, well, decriminalized or legal, whatever it is. Decriminalized. But they're going in those places, and of course whatever they're using to get the drug. But the reality is the guys are addicts.
Right.
No, they can legally go and get the drug, but the fact is they're addicts. So I'm saying, I don't know if it's actually helping the addict. No, I think there is a way in which we can use the medicinal purposes of the drug in a way that does not harm the body. But if you just allow them access to it without educating them as to what the implications are for the use of it and so on, I think it's a double-edged sword. So back to cause and symptom, and I think the real cause, because
I can substitute alcohol here.
Yes.
In the very same way that you gave the marijuana example in Vancouver.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So the thing is, I think whatever we normalize, and in Grenada, seriously, I think we're developing a drug culture in Grenada. Or music, especially around Carnival is coming up.
Right.
How responsible are we holding our artists and our people to say, listen, you have to be careful what you're putting out, and the media houses as well. So in other words, because we might be saying one thing on one side, but on the other hand, we're opening the door for everything, right? So I'm saying that I think collectively we need to say, listen, here are the implications of this. Here's how it can be used. Here's how it should not be used. And here's the impact. But also, do not make something accessible to persons who don't know how to use it.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And I think we just have to draw the line and say, listen, yes, there might be something in there for us, but what are the fallouts? And because other countries have gone that way before us, we can let's study, let's do our research. We talk about evidence-based decisions, right? So let's make evidence-based decisions, and we are a small island, brother and minister. We are a small island. I'm telling you, we could be overrun quite quickly. So and when it comes to mental health and stress, listen, we have a beautiful country. I don't think enough of us are taking the time to really enjoy and soak up the beauty in our country, and we're allowing other substitutes. I think that is really not, is causing us more harm than good. We have beaches. I mean, I was on the sea today, right? We have beaches, we have forests, we can do so much to relieve us. We could go and watch birds, we can go on the sun. We could do a lot. So I think as Grenadians, let's get out.
And I want you just to emphasize, and either of you can respond to this, that our conversations when we speak of mental health, we're not only speaking of the schizophrenic. We're not only speaking of the bipolar individual who might have a manic or depressive episode. We're speaking of our mental well-being in general. And as I think Jude, you pointed out, that it's not an event, because when we go along it gradually, as it were, and we need to assist everyone in recognizing either when themselves or another person start going down that slippery slope and prompt an intervention.
Yeah, and slow down. I mean, I was going up to the ministry one day, and I could. My body was telling me, Jude, you know what? You have to slow down. I actually started walking up the steps in the ministry already. I went back down the stairs, went back to my vehicle, sat in there, relaxed for a while and so on. And then when I composed myself and I got myself on, I went back to my errand. So I think we have to understand how our body speaks to us. I know when I'm getting stressed. Right? I know when the pressure is on, and I mean, pressure is a reality of life right now. So it's how do we manage it, right? We can't say we can eliminate all of it. And here's the thing: I think some pressure is good, right? Because I think, Colin, Minister, you're a stronger person today because of the pressures that you went through in life, right? So I think we can't give people the impression that we can avoid all pressure. We should not.
Right.
But how do we manage it? Right? How do we not make it a crisis? And I think all of us, and we can train our children from how do we deal with crisis. And it's not the end. Listen, it is not the, so for those who are not, let's say, chemically and so on, have mental, which is usually chemicals and stuff.
Right.
But for the average person, it's not the end of the world. Right? Relax.
Right.
Take it easy.
So it's okay to be not okay.
Right.
So
for a period.
Yes, it is okay to be not okay for a period. To feel, and sometimes we want to be perfect man or perfect woman, and so we all of us have vulnerabilities, and so sometimes we have to be vulnerable to be able to speak up about issues that are affecting us, and we can use our issues to help others appreciate that. Sometimes they see her as a minister and thinking, well, that's it. Not realizing that you too have challenges. Right. You do too at days go being stressed, being depressed, and you could feel open to speak about the fact that you are stressed and how you feel when you are stressed and how you would cry, and it's okay to cry too when you have challenges. So we as adults, we in leadership positions, and leadership doesn't mean government, but it means you as a leader in your own field, in education. You as a leader within your church and within the community, we can feel free to speak up about issues that are affecting us, because mental health speaks to, as I said earlier, the whole well-being. It's not somebody who's walking naked outside or somebody who's cussing and carrying on, but it's just how you feel at it thing. You feel stressed, you feel you are depressed, you're not feeling yourself. Something is not feeling right in your head, and therefore you could find somebody who you are comfortable with, somebody who you trust to speak about it and be open, on particular issues. And so there are some things that could cause us to be depressed. Sometimes you're scrolling through Facebook and everything you see is about yourself, and so those stressors, sometimes you find a way to eliminate them at times. So you find something alternatively that you can do. Reading is a healthy way of dealing with stress. You find a novel or something that's something that you like, some topic that you like. Yeah. Sometimes it might be romance, it might be politics. In my field, I read a lot of them, by a lot of the books. Right. Or it could be your Bible is an important aspect that could guide your daily life. And so one of the things that would have help me as an individual is my ability to know that there's a higher being that you can reach out to. So the first thing in the morning, the last thing at night is praying and sometimes even worshiping for yourself, and there's some songs that would just uplift you as an individual. So even listening to music is another area that can help you to distress. Okay. A family, going out together as a family, in my case, I feel refreshed every time I get all my children to be part. For example, it's my birthday, and yesterday every one of them came together and we were together, and I could have spent long hours being there just talking with them. And generally I feel that way, and that might work for somebody else, for other families. So we can help others to be able to deal with the stresses of life, because just the very fact that you are alive, there will be time in your life when there are issues that will stress you out, there are issues that will affect you mentally, and so you would need the necessary support.
Right. Well, that was an excellent way to close off, actually. But let me just say, I'll thank you, because I think it's an excellent way. I can't beat that. So, Jude, Hector, thank you so very much. Minister Thomas, if you have a closing comment, you certainly can add.
But I think I made a closing comment, but the truth is, we're talking about ways we can distress, and I believe from July 3rd to 7th is a good time that we can distress. Australia versus West Indies, National Cricket Stadium.
So we move
See you there.
We move from the Minister for Mental Health to the Minister of Sport. So we're going to support the Windies when they come to Grenada to play against Australia.
Thursday to Monday.
From Thursday to Monday. Jude, Minister Thomas, thank you so very much. And to you, our listeners and viewers, for being part of this evening's program. Have yourselves a wonderful evening. Look forward to seeing you again in 6 days, 22.5 hours. Good night.